Hello, folks. The glaciers are receding, as we say. Look at this. Look at this. Look at that. Those are 3 raised garden beds. There is garlic in there. And you can see I have some garden boxes that are starting to emerge. Look at this south-facing wall. Only about a foot of snow left, folks. We are getting there. It is drippy from the eaves. We still have some snow. We got a lot to clean up. There's a big pile. Big pile. Oh boy, big pile. We're getting there though. It was like 55 degrees today. So I want to talk to you today about some of the worst child neglect that I have seen in real life and why this matters. So my family went out today. We saw the Easter Bunny at the local fire department. The kids went there, and then we went for a drive, and we went to an old ghost town with an old stamp mill. So I live in the copper mining district region of Michigan's Upper Peninsula, the Keweenaw Peninsula, and there was an old stamp mill. And the place where this is located, they didn't have any snow. It's warm. It's south of where I am. I'm in a higher elevation, and it was lovely. So my older kids and I explored some of their ruins. We walked down, and it was really fun. And we were getting into just, folklore and exploring all these really neat old spaces. And then we all sat up on the cliff. So it's about 100 foot from the top of the cliffs down to the bottom. And we all were sitting and sunning ourselves, eating some trail mix and letting the kids just run around free. Because, when you get this much snow, everybody's been cooped up. And I have not been outside in about 6 months. I don't get to go out. I have babies that are still nursing. And that's just mama life up here. So it was really nice. And so as we were enjoying our time, this little boy, about 7 years old, rode up on his bike, and he had his younger brother, I'm guessing, who was about 2 years old. Both boys were in what I would call pajamas, middle of the day, which, all right, I get it. Some people wear pajamas all day. I don't. Neither do my kids. But that's not the point. The point is not what they were wearing. So this little toddler boy, he stood right at the edge of where there was a chain link fence with razor wire on top to deter people from going towards the edge of the cliff, because it's a 100-foot drop with concrete down at the bottom and old, bits of this stamp mill sticking out of the edge, and there's rocks and logs, and it is not a comfortable looking ride down to the bottom of this cliff, if you catch my drift. And this little boy jumped that fence. No problem. He'd done it 100 times. Not a big deal. He went right up to the edge of the cliff, and he was looking back at my family and my kids as though this was his space. He didn't come down to hang out with my kids, my boys who are about the same age. He didn't really want to engage with us much. He came down to show us that he knew how to jump that fence, and he knew how to go to the edge of the cliff and throw rocks. And I was like, looking around, where's the adult? Where's the adult? Where's the adult? No adult came. And this went on for a few minutes. My kids are not going to cross that fence line. I call them right back if they do. And that's not where we're going. And this little 2-year-old boy started bawling his eyes out. Maybe he realized that there wasn't an adult around, that he was standing there on his own. Nobody was there for him. He was a baby. I have a daughter the same age. I would never, ever, ever let her be there unsupervised. I would never let any of my kids be there unsupervised. It's not even a possibility. I couldn't even imagine that. And I'm a pretty, I wouldn't say I'm a free range parent, but you got to learn, if you're going to be dumb, you got to be tough parent. I do not helicopter my kids. They have to learn how to manage themselves and manage danger, but I would never put them in that situation, because it's my job to teach them how to protect themselves and care for themselves. And these children were not being taught this. So this little toddler started bawling his eyes out. He looked around, didn't know where to go, didn't know how to get home. And his brother jumped a fence and, kind of started walking in the direction of, I'm assuming, where their house was. And I stood up and honey, do you need help getting home? I didn't know where to take him. And he found his way. It was just a house just kind of behind us. And his brother says, oh, he'll be fine. He can get home. He can get home. I don't even think this kid had shoes on, actually. I think he just had footy pajamas on. And I thought, this is heartbreaking. This is heartbreaking that the adults in this child's life are so inept that they can't keep an eye on these little boys. And so this little boy, the bigger boy, he went back forth a couple times, jumped the fence a couple times, threw more rocks. A second little boy joined him, maybe a brother, maybe a cousin, maybe a neighbor. They were wearing bike helmets, which I was very surprised at. That was surprising. But they kept doing this. They kept jumping the fence, throwing the rocks, and this was extremely dangerous. Like, they could have easily slipped off of a cliff, an actual cliff, and we all know what would have happened. This was so sad to me because I've seen a lot of child neglect and abuse in my life. I was raised in pretty serious child abuse and neglect, as was my husband, and this is awful. I've called CPS plenty of times on, crappy parents. CPS doesn't do much unless you're like actively selling your child for meth. And I've seen some really sad things, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to call. I didn't call today. It actually crossed my mind, but I didn't. But it broke my heart because this little boy, did not come out to, play with my kids, engage with my kids, connect with them at all. He came out to kind of like compete, to puff up his chest, to show us that this was his space. And that he was kind of this, he was the guy. He was the dude that we should all turn to. He had authority in this space. That was his energy that he was giving off. Like, those of you who aren't, wrapped up in your own ego, you might be able to tell that when someone enters a space and they're all about like preserving themselves and they're so fragile and they really want you to notice them and give them a lot of credit as like the biggest, the best, the coolest. They have an energy about them. And this little boy had it. That's so sad because obviously he learned it from the adults in his life. So why does this matter? Well, child abuse and neglect matters. It absolutely matters. And I want to really explicitly explain that this child abuse and neglect is how we have Donald Trump in 2025, how we have fascism. So we have people in MAGA, and it's not just MAGA. There's people on the left that engage in, problematic behavior as well. But those of us who are raised in child abuse and neglect, we are primed to become abusers ourselves if we do not check ourselves and deconstruct and figure out what the hell is going on in our families and in ourselves. And that's something my husband and I have done, and we're still actively doing, and I'll do it until the day I die. To break generational trauma is a lifelong journey. And I don't always get it right, but we're going to keep going. So the reason that fascism is so appealing to those who have been harmed as children is because they think now it's their turn to harm others, and that will somehow soothe and fill their soul. Right? They don't know that it's actually love that helps us get through the hard times and helps us feel something, because what's been modeled for them is pain and abuse and domination. They think that that's the answer. And that's fascism, right? That's exactly what it is. And that's why it's so appealing to these people. And it breaks my heart because today I saw a group of young boys who in 20 years, they're the guys that are going to be hurting others, because instead of saying, I'm going to do that hard work to make sure that others' lives are better, I'm going to get through my pain. Instead, they're going to make the choice to say, actually, now it's my turn. Now it's my turn to dominate. It's my turn to step on someone's throat. It's my turn to make them do what I want them to, because I'm the one that matters. My pain matters more than anything else, and it will be soothed by the suffering of others. Sound familiar, right? Isn't that what we're seeing on a national level? So those of you out there who believe in sending good energy, please send it up this way towards these little boys because they desperately need it. That was just heartbreaking today. So I wanted to share that with you. I hope you all are doing well. And if you have a child in your life, give them a hug. And if you don't, send those good energies. Find a way to make the lives of those younger than you better. And you'll feel better for it. Take care.